the way they have impacted our learning environments and students for many, many years. With both of these challenges in front of us, it would be easy to become disenchanted or find the challenge too daunting, but you generally don't get into education if you don't have a certain level of optimism. So I am really coming to you tonight in a spirit of transparency and openness about where we are, which is in an imperfect place. Because I feel like being open that way with you all as community members and community partners is really the only way we will manufacture and generate the kind of trust and connectivity and flexibility that we need together to create the best experience for our students and for our families this year, despite these profound limitations. I want to name right up front that there is a considerable amount of frustration, of anger, of uncertainty and anxiety out there. That is not lost on me or my staff at all. The numerous shifts that we have experienced over the summer have delayed everything from you all receiving schedules, to placements, to our teaching staff receiving teaching assignments. And I just want to acknowledge that and offer, not in the way of an excuse, but in the way of an explanation, that is a derivative, in my view, of the situation and the constant shifts we've been managing, and not one of commitment on our staff. We have had teachers, community members, family liaisons, principals, district staff working ungodly hours all summer, and then having to scrap, redesign, pivot, shift, etc. So again, that does not negate the frustration that you all are feeling, nor the impact that it's had on your planning and your ability to understand clearly what's happening for your students. So we will continue to work on that again together, us holding responsibility as educators and working in partnership with you as a community. In my view, we are sitting in a spot that is more difficult than what we had last spring. That is probably not the ideal type of rah-rah statement that you would make in a set of kickoff remarks. But again, I think it speaks to that need to be candid and honest with each other as we approach the problem solving we're going to need to do together as a community to make this work for kids. I think that last year we were in that place of emergency response. We pivoted to that quickly, did the best we could, but both we as educators and you as parents and community members have a bigger set of expectations this fall, and that is that we will better approximate the rigor and the learning that students would have in a more typical school environment. I think that is possible. I do not think that that will be easy, and it will take the constant commitment and a commitment to continuously improving and adapting what we are doing in this distance learning format over time for us to do that well. I want to speak for just a second about public health, because obviously that is at the top of my list every day. It is really the prerequisite for any serious conversation about whether or not or when we will return to in-person instruction. Many of you know that we got metrics in mid-July, 14 days off the county watch list before we consider reopening. Right now, as many of you know, the case rates and hospitalization rates in Alameda are still too high, and we're not having a serious conversation right now about when we would return to in-person learning. We are certainly having an active and ongoing conversation about how we would return once that green light comes up. Some of you know that the county issued a revised order today, a revised public health order today, that will take effect on the 28th. And in that order, there's some things that still need to be sifted through. But that order essentially indicates to me that we are going to be in this distance learning model for the foreseeable future. I know that that is somewhat ambiguous. I wish I could tell you by the end of November, by the end of December, end of the first semester. I just think it is not going to be us being back in 4 to 6 weeks. That may not be a shock to those of you that are following the news closely, but I think we need to get our heads around that, not only to deliver consistency for kids, but to underscore the importance of meetings like tonight, where we will actively try to learn together and build capacity in you as parents and ourselves as educators to strengthen that partnership that is going to be necessary to make this work. It is also not lost on me, and I want to name this as well, that while I think the position that we are sitting in terms of being in distance learning out of a preeminent concern for the safety of our students and our families and our staff and public health as a whole, it is not lost on me that while that is the right decision in my view at this time, it is also a decision with a significant cost that we need to work actively to mitigate. There are students and families who are unable to do their jobs from home that are going to be adversely impacted and perhaps exponentially impacted if we are not consistent in how we reach out and support those families. So again, in that theme, however cliched, we are all in this together, we have to be cognizant, in my view, of the full dimensions and implications of the fact that there are families experiencing this pandemic and this school closure and this mode of distance learning in ways that are vastly different. That all leads to me to, again, this theme of working together. Our teachers are really going hard at trying to plan, to develop their curriculum in ways that are engaging online. I said this to our teaching staff the other day that, the art and science of teaching and learning has probably never been more difficult, nor has it ever been as important. And I can tell you that they are hard at work on that. I want to speak briefly to technology and connectivity, just because I think I want to make sure that our families, or our families who know families, know that we have the resources, at least on the technological end, to support everyone. Our tech team and our business office have done a tremendous job, in my view, of getting ready all summer. We are in a position now to ensure that every student in Alameda Unified can have a device. We are working through our principals and our site-based leadership teams. So again, if you or someone you know needs a device, you're going to be getting information on pickup, accessibility through your local school leadership. Connectivity or Wi-Fi access has been another part of that discussion. In the spring, we distributed some hotspots. Many of you know that hotspots are wireless devices. In areas of the island where the cell reception is not great, a hotspot is not the ideal solution. So we are in a position now where, again, for our families who qualify for free and reduced lunch, who do not have an existing internet connection, we are going to be sending out some information through our site teams because the district is going to be able to support 6 months worth of internet access through Comcast and through Common Networks for the first semester. That's not a long-term solution, but it's a better than short-term solution. So we're going to actively publicize that resource as we continue. So what now as we move forward? What happens next? I've said it a few ways, but I'll say it again, that I think our jobs are the same, but our jobs are now going to have to be conducted in a radically altered context. I use this model a lot. My staff has held this up, and it comes from a guy named Richard Elmore, and it's called the instructional core. And it's really just a simple representation of what the most important set of relationships at the core of the education setting are. And if you just picture a triangle, at the top of that triangle is student, and at the second point in that triangle is teacher, and at the third point in that triangle is content and curriculum. And if you just see those three interdependent relationships, you see, in my view, and in the view of Mr. Elmore, the three most critical relationships that make up the nucleus of the atom, or the core of what we're doing. We have to do those things now in a context that has stripped us of some of our most accessible and available and tried and true tools. Our educators are going to have more difficulty picking up on behavioral cues in the classroom the way they used to. They're going to have more challenges kind of redirecting attention issues, as will you as parents and family members supporting that education. Perhaps something we need to be most cognizant of is the fact that the ways in which we can administer that very necessary shot of affirmation or confidence to a child when they are struggling is also something we're going to have to kind of find creative ways to do, or double down through communications in mediums like this to support our children moving forward. You all, along with our educators, are going to be the facilitators of connection at a time where distance is the norm. Together, we are going to have to be the portals of new concepts and ideas for our kids, in a culture that presently is marked pretty strongly by generalized isolation. We are going to have to do what we typically do in different ways as educators, which is to couple care with content to really facilitate student growth and hold those spaces where one of my favorite educational authors, Paulo Freire, says, we help kids manage their own transformations. And I know that is not going to be easy. Again, I have heard a lot of honest feedback in the last several weeks, ranging from generally supportive to scathing critique. And I value all of those perspectives that I have gotten from you. They are not always easy to read. They are often articulating problems that I am still with my team struggling to solve. But again, it is that kind of open exchange and dialogue that will help us make this year worthwhile for students and perhaps help us take some of the ideas that we come up with as we exercise creativity and chaos to make what we go back to on the other side of COVID-19 even more inspirational and supportive of kids. There's a woman named Betty Lucet who is an author and an organic chemist. And Betty talks about the fact that creativity's greatest moments to act are in times of confusion and chaos. And she goes on to say that another way to describe change is that chaos is often necessary first so that creativity has disassembled components available to reassemble into new forms. And that doesn't mean there are not structures and things that give us stability and clarity in the school environment that we need to abandon altogether. But I do think we have a long-term opportunity here to, in our mitigation and in our creative efforts in the short term, really think differently about how we do school in a way that is better for all of our students. Are there opportunities for us to redefine the narrow definitions of what it means to be intelligent or what it means to be a scholar? Those sort of narrow definitions that have historically marginalized home cultures of some kids, the beauty, intelligence of cultures other than our own, and had particularly pernicious effects on, for instance, our students of African descent. Are there ways to think differently about what we're doing in this moment where creativity is going to be an obligation anyway? And what that looks like, I certainly have a few ideas. You'll see those as we continue to develop our graduate profile and our strategic plan. We are not abandoning those ideas just because we have to operate in a challenging and unique structure right now. Those ideas, I hope you will see, and Sara will talk about them in a little bit, reflect what I think should be actionable and visible work that we are doing in classrooms. You right now don't need, nor should you expect, platitudes or philosophical statements. I think what we are going to do to further the cause of learning and equity needs to be seen, again, in actionable statements. And so again, I think this is hard work, but it is something that we absolutely can do together. I want to continue to affirm the fact that there are variables we have not solved from. I've watched this firsthand. My wife is a teacher and her students came back last Monday, and watching her kind of struggle through the time limitations, the limitations and constraints of the medium, our two young daughters being absolutely unforgiving in their ritual disrupting of her work and our work. And again, we are among those privileged folks who are able to do our jobs right now from home. So the fact that there are folks out there without those advantages, those are the reasons that we are continuing to explore these concepts of learning hubs, constantly in dialogue with community partners about how we can support folks with fewer options in this time, et cetera. I think whatever work and whatever effort we can summon as a community, again, I have ideas, and your tax money underscores the fact that it is my obligation and my team's obligation to provide your education. We will do that, but we will do that less effectively if we are not in continuous partnership with you all. I think if we can summon some extra this year, despite the imperfections, and despite the way folks are feeling, it'll be good for kids and it'll be good for us, because as an educator and as a parent, my greatest satisfaction is derived from those times where I feel like I have played a small or large hand in a student's growth or in my own child's growth, despite any set of obstacles that may be sitting in the way. Paulo Freire, again, in the book, The Pedagogy of the Oppressed, basically said education can go one or two ways. It can be used to dominate or to adapt people to oppressive conditions, or it can be used to liberate and essentially become freedom in practice. And I think you can apply that statement to a whole host of components and conditions that we are dealing with in our culture right now, be they based on race, be they based on isolation, etc. Again, it is not a perfect position that we're in, but there is a lot of hard and good work going into it. Again, I know our families are stressed, our teachers are stressed, our principals are stressed. I think Sara just kind of came from a meeting working through some folks with our, working through some things with our principals. But again, I have no choice, nor do I have any desire to be anything but optimistic about our ability to serve kids well together during this period of time. So I want to welcome you to tonight. I hope the tools and the technology and the lessons and the support that we have assembled together for our parents is of some benefit for you, hopefully of greater benefit. And please keep your input and your feedback coming. We are not tethered to being right. We are tethered to the idea of what is right for kids. And as we need to adapt and adjust together, we'll do that. So thanks again for being here. And I think I will turn it over to our Chief Academic Officer, Ms. Stone.
Thank you, Pasquale. Thank you so much. And thank you all. I apologize to those of you. I was late. As Pasquale said, I was up to the minute of this with principals, working with them to get school ready for our kiddos. Super excited to start seeing the kids. We've been doing so much planning, and it's been really challenging. We're building the plane while we're flying it, honestly. And I just know that it's for the kids, and I just cannot wait to see them this week. So I also understand, and I'm just going to name it, we have a Zoom capacity of 300, and there are so many more people who want to be here, and I appreciate that. We are live streaming it on Facebook, so you can let your friends know that. We're also recording it, and we'll do everything in our power if there is the possibility of having some Zoom sessions that have more than 300 in the future. But we really are so appreciative that so many folks want to be here. Susan, if you wouldn't mind sharing refresh it and then share my PowerPoint, that would be wonderful.
Okay.
So as Pasquale named, I'm Sara Stone. I'm the Chief Academic Officer. I'm starting my second year in the district. And what a first year it's been. Both Pasquale and I started in the district last year, and we got, off the ground this graduate profile that we're super excited about. And we've done so much work around it. And then, of course, in March, all of our lives changed dramatically. But I'm here tonight to just tell you more. Some of you have been in a lot of our town halls and different meetings. Some of you might have already visited our website and gotten a lot of information. But I really want to make sure everyone's got the same information tonight about what we're doing this year. So next slide, please. So as Pasquale named, we have Richard Elmore, who's one of my favorites in the education world, and he talks about this instructional core. The way I like to describe that is it's the magic. It's the magic that happens in a classroom. When I was a teacher, there was a moment you just saw that spark in the little sparkle in students' eyes where they get it. And so really the instructional core is that relationship between the student and the teacher, and when that content becomes really clear to them. And no matter whether we are in virtual or in-person settings, we are working really, really hard to continue to create that magic. Next slide, please. We also recognize, as Pasquale mentioned, we're going through a really challenging time. VUCA is a term that is used by the Navy SEALs, I believe, and it talks about volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. And I can say that the world that we're living in right now with COVID-19, fires, racial justice fighting, everything under the sun, it is definitely a VUCA time. Next slide, please. And we have some thoughts about how we can all together get through these times. We are working really hard to create all of those opportunities for children to collaborate with one another in this time. It's hard. It's very hard. I have two kids. I have a it's a child who's supposed to go to college this year, who's going to be starting college in distance learning, and I have a 12-year-old who already started school. And connections, the most important thing. And so we're working really hard to figure out how to do that for them. We also know that this is a time like none other. There's frustration, disappointment. It's just so hard when you're so used to having certain rituals for your family, and all of a sudden, all of those things are gone. And I think that there's always opportunity in everything, in all of our struggles. And so we really have seen this as a time to think about how are we building resilience in ourselves and in our students. We also know that some of this might be the perfect storm for really sparking creativity in our students. Some of the hardest moments for my own kids, that is when they really are the most creative. I have an artist and a writer in my home, and I have to say that over this time, they've been spending a ton of time doing things that they maybe normally wouldn't have time for. So there is opportunity there too. And it's also a time for us to really think about how are we helping our students to build some independence. I will bring my kids up a lot probably in this conversation because I'm going through this right now with my 12-year-old especially. He really struggles with all of those abilities to be really organized, executive functioning. And this has really been a moment in time where he's had to really kind of learn some things on his own. And I actually see that it's going to be an opportunity for him moving forward. I've had to support him with it, no question. But it is something that I actually honestly didn't even realize was going on for him until I was here with him. And so I'm glad that I was able to support him through that. Next slide, please. So I'm going back to, Pasquale named it, and I'm gonna name it again because it's something I'm really proud of in the work that we did last year, and that is putting together this academic profile, which is what we call, it's our North Star. It's what we want our students to be when they are finished with us in AUSD and they move on and launch into their lives. And I recognize that a lot of what we talked about in this graduate profile is even more challenging in distance learning, but it is still the North Star. We still are focusing on getting our kids college and career and life ready, seeking opportunities and challenges in learning, knowing themselves and working effectively with others, and really, again, building community through understanding themselves and others and through service. Next slide, please. So in thinking about March to June, in taking a lot of feedback from families, from students, and from staff, and also realizing that we did have this beautiful graduate profile that we had co-constructed with our community, we developed some really clear strategic priorities and practices for this year. I'm going to talk to you about the student level goals tonight. And all of these are available to you and will be made available to you on our website as well. Next slide, please. So our student level goals. We know that in order for us to meet that North Star of graduate profile, our students need to participate in experiential learning, such as investigations, inquiry, modeling of their thinking, and taking local action. We need to make sure that every single day students are reading, thinking about their reading, talking and writing about these complex texts every single day. And so we need to make sure that that's a goal that we are setting for ourselves, that they have access to that. We also know that they need to establish and maintain healthy, rewarding relationships with diverse individuals and groups. And we are also really clear, and I myself, and I know that our district is really committed to becoming an anti-racist organization. And we need to make sure that we are giving our students opportunities and support to dialogue about equity issues and take action to interrupt inequity. Next slide, please. So embedded in all of the goals, the teacher goals as well, the district goals, the leadership goals, we have this anti-racist effort in each priority area. Our strategic plan will be explicit with African-American student success while respecting diversity of families and students within that community. And it is absolutely reflective of our regard to leading, teaching, and assumptions. Next slide, please. So another thing that has really impacted us in our planning, and I don't know how many pages this is. It's hundreds of pages. SB 98. It's the law that was enacted that Governor Newsom signed in June. And basically it is the parameters for how we are going to do school during COVID-19. So I'm about to explain some of the high level pieces of it. Next slide, please. So under SB 98, there are some very specific rules that we need to follow. Districts, or they call them LEAs, or Learning Education Associations. I guess that's what it stands for.
Local Education Agency.
Local, thank you. Oh my gosh, I'm totally wrong. Local Education Agency, thank you. Which is learning district or school districts, need to provide access to devices for students. We need to make sure that students have access to anything that we're asking them to do online. We as a district are also very committed to supporting figuring out the connectivity issues that we know that are facing some of our families. And I think we have, some ideas and some supports. We need to make sure that if you are having trouble with your access for your students in terms of a device or connectivity, that we're aware of that so we can support you. We need to make sure that our content is aligned to grade level standards and is delivered both in a synchronous, meaning with the teacher in front of students giving direct instruction, and asynchronous, which means that students are doing it independently, but they're still getting support from their teacher to do it. We need to make sure we have academic and other supports for all of our students who need that level of support. Special education and related services are required. Designated and integrated ELD, which is English language development, we're continuing that, and we have to under law, and we would do it anyway because we know it's the right thing to do. We are working, students are supposed to have daily live interaction with certificated employees, and they're also supposed to have interaction daily with peers. We need to document this daily participation, and we need to track weekly engagement. Next slide, please. So we have developed two different programs to address not only what we know is the right thing to do. As I said before, we want to make sure that our students have access no matter what, that they're continuing to learn. And we also wanted to make sure that if we were able to go back to on-campus learning when it is safe, we wanted to make sure that for those students, families, and staff members that really couldn't go back for whatever reason, whether it's a medical reason or something else, that there was an option for them. So we basically worked very hard this summer to put together two different programs, completely different programs, a remote learning program and a flexible program. The remote learning program is a virtual learning program and is predominantly asynchronous, meaning it's happening without the teacher right there, but the teacher is supporting that learning. And then the flexible program is the one that we designed that we hoped could go between distance learning and on-campus learning flexibly. And right now we're starting in distance learning, as we all know. Next slide, please. So just a little bit more about those programs. So the flexible program, again, it's a combination of more teacher-directed instruction and then some online learning. The teacher is doing the planning for the delivery and content. Class time is used for discussion and projects to synthesize the learning and the information. There are also during asynchronous time, there will be some lessons that are delivered through videos or other formats. Students are going to be Teachers are going to be following our traditional curriculum, and it's going to be paced based on the needs to master a set of priority standards and skills. And again, it's more of a balance of synchronous and asynchronous time, more synchronous than asynchronous. The remote program is fully distance. We are using an online platform called Acellus predominantly, although we are going to be supplementing it and looking for more resources to support that program. The teachers really work as more of a learning coordinator. They're holding space for kids. They're helping kids move along in Acellus, and they're going to be doing more small group. supports, as well as there will be some whole group SEL meetings in that program. The parent plays a huge role in both programs. For both, we need parents to be really supportive and helping act as a learning coach. In the remote model, the learning coach actually has a more formalized relationship with the Acellus program, so that they're working closely with that learning coordinator to make sure that students are moving along, and that the learning coordinator is really clear about where students are getting stuck from the parent's perspective or the learning coach's perspective. Students are going to be working in a little bit more of a self-paced way during the remote program, but we are still following standards, and we're still focused on priority standards. Next slide, please. So there's some impact to running two programs. Definitely challenging, and definitely something that we've been working hard all summer to solve. I love to do puzzles. Love, love, love. It's my favorite thing. I've been doing a ton of puzzles during COVID-19. And I can say that trying to figure out how to create a remote and flexible program at the same time is probably the best puzzle I've ever been a part of solving. There's staffing challenges, things that we needed to think about, class configurations, master scheduling, which of course resulted in some delays in communication and delays in teaching assignments. Next slide, please. So I'm gonna pivot a little bit. I want everyone to understand that we have some common platforms for instructional delivery this year. Even with the remote and flexible program, we are going to be using some common platforms that every student and every family will have access to. And the session that, the 2 sessions that happen after this, we have separated into, if you're in the remote program, you'll go to the remote session. If you're in the flexible program, you go to the flexible. And you'll learn more about these different platforms. Probably in the remote, you'll learn more even about Acellus. But we are using Google Classrooms as our learning management system. And this is where teachers are really going, it's their classroom, it's their virtual classroom. It's where assignments are posted. It's how we're going to communicate with students about their work. Zoom is what we're doing right now. And this is going to be how we deliver synchronous instruction predominantly. And it is going to be a place for students to come together and collaborate and build community. We also are rolling out Parent Square this year, which is how you will be communicated with by your schools and by the district. And that will be discussed during the sessions later. And then ARIES is the program that we use that we put our grades into. So it's how you'll be getting information about how your student is doing in terms of their grades and completing their assignments. Next slide, please. So there's been a lot of questions about what does this mean? Synchronous, asynchronous, how much time is my kid actually going to be with the teacher? Why did you guys create the schedules you created? So I just wanted to show you, this is actually the teacher instructional minutes. This is what the teachers are responsible for delivering based on the MOU that we just passed with the union. What this means is teachers are responsible for providing this amount of time with their students every day in both synchronous and asynchronous. When I say synchronous, that is when they're all together. I call that like tier 1, like everyone is getting instruction. It doesn't mean that they're necessarily getting it all exactly at the same time, but they're all getting that first instruction around the priority standards. Asynchronous time, when students might be doing something on their own, they might be doing a project, online, offline, but doing some other work that is a part of their instructional core and their instructional time. Teachers can also be meeting with students during asynchronous time in small groups and one-to-one, and also holding office hours with families. For students who are, for English language learners, there also is the ELD, which is synchronous, and that is on top of what's happening across the classroom in these other areas. And then every Wednesday, we also will have a synchronous class check-in before kids go off and do their asynchronous learning. Next slide, please. So SB 98, we talked about that before, has the student minutes per day. that are required. So the students are supposed to receive this many minutes of instruction every day during COVID-19. What SB 98 does not do is explain exactly how much is supposed to be synchronous and exactly how much is supposed to be asynchronous. We are supposed to do the best possible job of creating a synchronous and asynchronous experience with students getting this number of minutes daily. Next slide, please. And so I'm not going to show you all the schedules, and we're not going to go over them. I think that these were all sent out to you, but I just wanted to really highlight again, because we've been getting a ton of questions about the asynchronous time, what happens during that time. So while students are, the day is going to be organized. There's a whole class meeting to set up some group dynamics. Again, really the point of that is social emotional learning, to connect with their classmates, to connect with their teacher. And then during the synchronous instruction, they're getting their priority instruction, their standards at that time. And again, that might look different depending on, again, you can only see about 20 kids on Zoom at one time. So if you have a class of more than 20, the synchronous instruction might be delivered in smaller groups, but that is the first instruction, and that is the time where kids are getting that direct instruction from their teachers. During asynchronous time, I call that sort of more like the tier 2 and the tier 3 time when they're with teachers, if they're going to be with teachers. But all students will have asynchronous experiences, again, that are connected to that first tier, that first level of instruction that they're doing. So that is a time where students are going to be doing independent work, and their teachers may be calling them in for small groups or one-to-one support or doing office hours. The purple bands of the, let's just move on to the next slide, and then I'll show. So the purple band, you'll see here, this is an example of a 1st through 3rd grade schedule. That purple band where it says small group instruction, there's been some questions about that. Is that the only time in the day when small group instruction happens? No. And so during that orange band, there may be some small group instruction happening. There certainly could be some smaller breakouts during the synchronous instruction. The purple band is really for the students who receive English language development or who get specialized academic instruction if they have an individual education plan. It doesn't mean that other small groups won't happen during those times, but that is what that is reserved for, to make sure that we're really meeting the students' needs there. All right, so this is the 1st through 3rd, a sample. The next slide, please, is 6 through 12. So 6 through 12 is a little bit different. And the way that it is organized is that students are receiving within their period, there's the synchronous time, and then the asynchronous time is built straight into the class period. And so they're going to be getting some direct instruction, and then they're going to be getting some work that they need to do, and then they're going to get direct instruction and then work that they need to do. So that's kind of how that works. I will say too, on Wednesdays, I didn't explain this. So on Wednesdays, one thing that that we had to work really hard on is figuring out, when do our teachers get all of the preparation and planning that they should have, and also that is in their contract. And what we realized is that on Wednesdays, we wanted to make sure that teachers had a really strong amount of time to put all the asynchronous pieces together and have their planning time on that day. We are still doing a check-in every day or every Wednesday with our students. We want to make sure that we know what's going on for them, that there's social emotional learning and support that's happening. And then the rest of the day is really asynchronous. We are still working on figuring out how to use that time best for enrichment. And I just want to put a pin in that, because we have been working so hard to try and figure out all of these pieces. We're still working on that. And so that information is forthcoming. Next slide, please. And this is the example of what a moderate to severe special day class would look like. So you'll see that we're really breaking those classes into more small group instruction throughout the day. It really truly is the best possible way for our students in these classes to be able to access the curriculum. And the small group instruction is super essential for this group particularly. Next slide, please. The remote program, this is a sample schedule. We are going to be modifying this and working on it based on grade level, based on the needs of the students. The littles who are learning how to read might get a lot more small group instruction than the older students who might be a little bit more independent in their ability to learn. But this is an example of what it could look like in the remote program. Next slide, please. And then I just wanted to show that this is a sample course load for the remote program, how a CELIS might be broken up to support students. And more information, of course, will go out to the families in the remote program about this. Next slide, please. Again, I mentioned English language development. Oh, I see a typo, apologize for that. So just to be clear what this means. So integrated ELD is the instruction that is integrated into the curriculum while a teacher is teaching in that first band. I call that tier 1. It is how we make sure that our students who are learning English can access the curriculum and access the content. Designated ELD, which I said before, is that outside of that time, it's really the time where students are able to really hone in on specific language learning needs, build up vocabulary, really practice using the English language in a smaller setting. Next slide, please. And as you saw, we shared the sample schedule for the the moderate to severe special day classes. I do want folks to know that this summer there was Kirsten Zazo put together a really robust set of working groups that really helped develop everything that we've just mentioned and named. And I really wanted to highlight that there was a special education working group. There were 3, in fact, really focusing on how to make sure that we're supporting our special education students the best possible way that we can during this time. And I want to just highlight that they focused on curriculum, how we're adhering to IEPs and contingency plans, provision of support services, really kind of figuring out the best possible schedules for our students and the role of our paraprofessionals, and thinking about the training for paraprofessionals. Next slide, please. And so as a part of that, and again, back to SB 98, we really have to make sure that we're meeting, to the greatest extent possible, our individual education aligned plans. And so we're really focused on services and supports being aligned to the students' areas of need, and continuing to provide related services, as well as the transition services. Next slide, please. So I wanted to highlight, you're going to be getting a letter if you are a TK5 parent from me, and then you will probably be getting some follow-up letters either from your principals or from your teachers. And again, this is for the flexible program. So one thing I want to name, I taught elementary for 8 years. I was an elementary principal for 10 years, and then I supervised elementary as well as middle school principals. And so elementary obviously is my thing. And going back to that Elmore slide about the magic that happens in a classroom, it's really important to note that especially for our youngest students, it's important for all of our students, but especially for our youngest students, it's super important that the first few weeks of school, anywhere from 4 to 6 weeks of school, is really truly about building relationships and helping kids understand the routines and procedures that are going to be expected of them in the classroom. They are learning that through their activities connected to content. One thing that we realized is with distance learning, it's even more challenging to build those relationships. And so we put together what we are calling an equitable start schedule for our TK through 5 students. And your schools will be sending out more information. And as I said, a letter will be coming out. But we really want to make sure that we're focused on helping our students at the beginning of the year develop those relationships with their teachers, those trusting relationships that we know they need to have. And part of that is the family and the teacher also building that relationship. students, you know, when they know that their parent trusts the teacher, they start to trust the teacher as well. And then when there's a good relationship and they have that happening, it helps our students to feel more successful. We want to make sure that that students are also that we know what's going on for students. And so a part of this is really kind of assessing where students are and their needs so that we can really develop the right kind of program setting for them in this distance learning model. Next slide, please. I've also gotten a lot of questions about what is the difference between asynchronous learning and homework. And so as I shared before, we have a set of instructional minutes that we are required from SB 98 to ensure all of our students have. The instructional minutes are, if we could think about it, if we were back in a traditional setting, that's the amount of time that they're actually in school. So synchronous and asynchronous, that's school time. We also have homework, and asynchronous learning and homework are not the same. Now, we also have a homework policy that we are going to be following. And I recognize, and I'm very clear, and again, as a mom of 2 kids, and being concerned about all the time on screens, we're very cognizant that we want to make sure that we're developmentally appropriate, that our students aren't sitting on screens nonstop all day long every day. But we also want to make sure that students get their learning time, and then students get practice with their learning. And so homework tends to be more of a practice of what kids learned, or doing some things that help them build on their learning. And so I want to be clear that these are different, but we also have some limitations on how much homework will be given during distance learning time. Next slide, please. So the last thing is, and I said this before, and I am appreciating you ahead of time for the hard work that this is for all of us, and especially for parents right now. You really are the learning coach for your student right now, for your child right now. And we know that, and we recognize that. And we also know a lot of you are working. I'm full-time working, and I'm juggling trying to figure out how to do all of this for my kids. So I know what it feels like. We all as working parents know what this feels like, and it's extraordinarily challenging. And we really appreciate you for this, for helping us in this journey with our students. Some of the things that will help, and we'll talk more about this in the sessions to follow, is really continuing to maintain regular contact with your teachers. And our teachers are going to be maintaining regular contact with you. Anytime that students are assigned online or offline assessments or activities, it's really helpful if you can help us make sure that they're getting those completed. And making sure that our students are attending their classes and working on their asynchronous learning is very helpful for us. Thank you. Next slide. So, thanks to Claudia Medina, and thanks to some partners across our district, we were able to put together this family learning conference in a very short amount of time. And we're excited about it. And we want to make sure that you know that this isn't the only time this year that we're going to be coming together and supporting the learning of our learning coaches, who are you. And tonight is a kickoff for more that will come. And we're hoping that people will be able to go to whichever sessions they can today and then tomorrow. So right directly after this, when we finish, and very shortly, you will have the opportunity to either go to the Distance Learning Fundamentals 101, which is for the flexible program, or to the Remote Learning Fundamentals. At 7 o'clock, we have a guest speaker, Susan Andrian, who is a trauma-informed practitioner who is going to be talking about how to parent in times of crisis. Tomorrow, we have a 2 o'clock session just to kind of continue on along the lines of what Susan's going to bring up tonight around emotional wellness and self-care strategies. And at 3:15, some tools to support you in being a learning coach. From 4 to 5, we're going to talk about the communication platform that we're using, Parent Square, and how parents can be informed and be a part of our communication systems. Everything will be recorded, and so we will make sure that it goes out to all of our community after we're finished with all of our sessions. All right, I think we have a couple more slides, really quick. Where can you find more information? So we do have in this slide deck will be made available to all of you. Here's where you will find information about what to do and what the next steps are for making sure that our students are successful. Your school site should be communicating with you about materials pickup. If you need any support with technology, there is a link right here in this. Again, if you need a device or you have issues with connectivity or anything like that, you will contact your site principal. And there is a plethora of more information on our website that you can find. And there are links, these will be linked. This will be linked in the website for the parent conference. We'll also put this up on our website, and then these are all links. Next slide, please. So the road ahead. Again, we will be hosting more events throughout the year, and we definitely are encouraging you to get involved in your PTA, your SSC, ELAC, and equity and inclusion committees. And next slide. So thank you. Brene Brown is one of my favorite people in the world. I read all of her things, and I really appreciated this quote for myself as I was trying to figure out how I'm managing all of this new world with my own family. And so what she says is, one day you will tell your story of how you overcame what you went through, and it will be someone else's survival guide. And I think there's one more slide. Next slide.
I don't think there's one
Nope.
more.
Okay, there's no more.
Okay.
That's it. Okay. There was another quote, but it got taken out.
Okay.
All right. Thank you so much. I know you're probably tired of hearing my voice. I am tired of hearing my voice. And I do not know if we have any time for questions, because I know the next session is starting at 6.
I don't think we have time for questions, but I'd like everyone who's on here to know that we're going to be capturing this chat, and we'll turn it into expanding our FAQs that are already on our website. We do also have to close the Zoom meeting for a couple minutes just to get our next guests on, but we will open it up again, and we'll be live streaming to Facebook again.
And folks all have access to the website and know that the sessions for remote and flexible, how to link to them?
Yes.
Sarah, Susan? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. All right. Well, thank you so much, everyone. I appreciate you all for being here. I can't even tell you how honored I am that so many people showed up to our conference. And a big thank you to Claudia for working so hard to put it together, and for all the support that Susan Davis has put into this. And also a ton of thank yous to Mira for helping us. And thank you, Pasquale.
And there's a few folks who are on. Yes, this meeting is being recorded and will be made available.
It is being
Absolutely.
recorded. Yep.
Yes. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. So we're closing it and then reopening.
We're closing it and then reopening, so Susan, Andrea, or so that Amy can get in.
Okay, great.
But we have
Okay.
Okay.
So come right back, Pasquale.
Come right back to this link.
Yep.